Hi, my name is Jessica, and I'm currently a senior at Oakland Charter High School, and I'll be studying cognitive science at UC San Diego in the fall. Throughout middle school and high school, I struggled with my mental health after transitioning into a new environment and experiencing racism firsthand. I found it difficult to find resources specifically for AAPI individuals, which led me to join the Lotus Project. I hope to spread awareness about mental health and support fellow youth along the way.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wesley. I'm a senior at American High School, and I'll be attending Northwestern this fall. And much like Jessica, I also joined the Lotus Project because I wanted to raise awareness about mental health in my community. Throughout my time in high school, I've noticed that there's often a lot of stigma surrounding mental health, especially in the AAPI community. And so this often prevents students from seeking help and sharing their stories. Um, and I've struggled with this as well as many of my classmates as well. So this is one of the reasons why we wanted to start the Youth Mental Health Blogging Project, which aims to create a safe and friendly platform for youths to share their experiences with mental health through writing blogs. And so by writing about these experiences, we hope to amplify youth voices and also provide an opportunity for creative expression.
In this series of presentations, you'll hear from our volunteers who have worked hard over the last few months to produce their blogs. They've talked about their perspectives on AAPI hate in different aspects of society, from the media to schools and at home. So we hope you enjoy them.
Hello everyone, my name is Wesley, and today I will be presenting what I wrote about in my blog, which is titled AAPI Hate Taking the First Step in the Right Direction. So a little bit of background information about me. I'm a high school senior at American High, which is in Fremont, California, and my passion for mental health first started when I noticed the general lack of awareness about mental health, as well as the stigma surrounding it, just in daily conversations with family members as well as students in my school. And so wanting to help address this issue, I eventually joined the Lotus Project around 1.5 years ago. And throughout these 1.5 years, what I enjoyed the most as a member of the Lotus Project is having the opportunity to help raise awareness about mental health issues, as well as empowering other youths, especially in the AAPI community, which I'm also a part of. And as someone who doesn't have much experience writing blogs, this is definitely a really unique experience that I wanted to share with all of you guys, which is exactly what I hope to do in this presentation as I go over my thoughts on API hate and my writing process. So I started off my blog by addressing the recent rise in API hate crimes. And one of the key statistics I highlighted was the 339% increase in anti-AAPI hate crimes between 2020 and 2021. And remember, this is also during the peak, like COVID times. Furthermore, I also wanted to address the deadly Atlanta spa shootings, in which 6 of the 8 individuals that were shot and killed were actually of Asian descent. And so many recognize this as a racially motivated crime that really sparked the entire anti-Asian hate movement in the United States. And so overall, reflecting on these events in my blog, I wrote about how I believe that the many conspiracy theories regarding the origins of COVID often came at the expense of the AAPI community, and they were oftentimes wrongfully blamed for it. In addition, derogatory terms like Kung Flu also became much more widespread during this time, and this became like an increasing issue that I noticed in school, which is something that I wanted to write about in my blog. And so overall, in school, it's quite common to hear phrases like, go back to your country, especially during arguments between classmates. And due to the frequency of this phrase being tossed around among students, it's often treated as a joke. And this is sort of when I realized that for many of us, I believe that as a community and as students, we have really started to become desensitized to such phrases, um, which is one thing that I wanted to highlight in my blog. And I believe that as a community, we should know better than this and not joke around. And even during COVID, some people would ask questions and maybe they're joking around, but stuff like, do Chinese people eat bats? Which is something that I've heard many times in school during the past few years due to the COVID pandemic. And so over time, as more of these incidents occurred, I realized that by not speaking up for myself and also others, I was essentially enabling the hate to continue to spread, which is one of the main reasons I wanted to write about this in my blog, and I guess share my experience and thoughts on it. So at the same time within my blog, I also wanted to highlight some positives during the anti-AAPI hate movement. And one such example is Stop AAPI Hate, which initially started out as a small grassroots organization. And it was a collaboration between AAPI Equity Alliance, Chinese for Affirmative Action, as well as the Asian American Studies Department at San Francisco State. And this collaboration quickly grew into an international movement in just the span of a few months. And over the past 2 years, they not only recorded over 11,500 incidents of hate crimes, but they also played a really important role in getting the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act passed in 2021. And so this was a really motivating story to me. And I wanted to write about this in my blog because I wanted to spread a message. And essentially, it was that for the youth who read my blog, it was to encourage them to take their first step together in the right direction. And so whether that means joining the movement itself by volunteering for local API organizations or simply just speaking up for your friends and family whenever you can. This was something that I learned to do over the past 1.5 years in the Lotus Project. And I really believe that it can create a ripple effect that may grow into something larger over time, just like how the Stop API Hate movement initially just started as a small grassroots organization, and now it's grown into this large international movement. And so overall, reflecting on this blog writing process, I feel like one of my largest takeaways is not only that I learned more about the API community throughout the research and writing my blog, but more importantly, I had the opportunity to share my story and experiences by writing my thoughts down on paper. And I was even able to, throughout this writing process, discover more about myself and also my own beliefs, which I think helped me grow and mature as a mental health advocate. And so in the future, I definitely hope to continue reading, writing, and also advocating for API mental health, and hopefully encourage others to do so as well. And so lastly, just want to say thank you very much for listening to our presentation. And if you'd like to read our blogs, please scan the QR code. And yeah, thank you.
Now that we've heard about my experiences with AAPI hate, let's learn about Jessica's thoughts on AAPI hate.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jessica, and I'll be presenting about my perspectives and experiences with AAPI hate, chronologically organized as it relates to COVID-19. So I'll be discussing events before, during, and after COVID-19. The pandemic was a significant period of time for the AAPI community, which inspired me to talk about my own experiences with it. Before we jump into the presentation, I'd like to introduce myself a little more. I'm currently a senior at Oakland Charter High School, and I joined the Lotus Project during my junior year after developing a passion for mental health and advocacy earlier on. I personally enjoy creative writing, so I also really enjoyed this blog project. While blogging may not be necessarily creative writing, I love to be able to share my experiences with fellow youth and read about our volunteers' perspectives as well. Before we start, I'd like to put out a disclaimer that I'll be talking about potentially uncomfortable topics like racism. I think this discussion is really important and can be a great starting point for those who may not be aware of the issues in this presentation. Thank you for keeping an open mind. First, I want to discuss what I titled The Beginning. This is some context about AAPI hate in the United States. In the 19th century, Chinese immigrants were among the first Asian immigrants. They were looking for new job opportunities, but faced hostility and violence from white people for stealing their jobs, even though they were recruited by American companies, most prominently the Central Pacific Railroad Company. Because of this hostility and harmful legislation, such as the Chinese Exclusion Act and Executive Order 9066, AAPI folks are often the target of detrimental stereotyping, like the model minority myth. This leads me to my experience with AAPI hate before COVID-19. Racism against AAPI individuals was already normalized. Elementary school is where I first heard things like dog eater and where people constantly mocked my small eyes. I've experienced this at every single school I've been to, and some being worse than others. This was an experience I considered normal, and I usually brushed them off as jokes. Similarly, racial profiling against AAPI individuals, especially South and West Asians, has been normalized ever since 9/11. The notion that South and West Asians are a threat and terrorists is harmful for innocent citizens. One experience that made me realize how normalized racial profiling is that of Hassan Pikers. Hassan is a popular streamer on Twitch who is of Turkish descent. There's an instance during one of his streams where he watches a clip of a Muslim girl saying how she'd be checked for bomb residue every time she went through the airport. To which Hassan responds, "Wait, doesn't everyone go through that?" This was so normalized to him that he didn't even realize that he was being racially profiled. This isn't something that should be considered normal. Moving on to during the pandemic, AAPI individuals were scapegoated for COVID-19. There was a huge influx of violent physical and verbal attacks in the AAPI community. What started off with Chinese folks being the target of the attack quickly spread into anyone who looked even remotely Asian being attacked. My peers started to tell stories of being yelled at on the street, and we were asked in school by others classmates if we had COVID or ate bats. This ignorance at my school is not uncommon, even among staff. During International Week, where different cultures were to be shared, Asian Day only had red Lunar New Year decorations and foods like fried rice and boba. For Lunar New Year this year, students walked all over the decorations and ripped up and littered red envelopes all over the school. To me, it was a blatant sign of disrespect, and the lack of care was shocking and hurtful to watch. While I don't expect people to be fully knowledgeable about our cultures, I didn't expect people to just basically stomp all over it. So I hope that no one ever has to experience something like this and that schools will do more research before planning cultural events. Now, on the contrary, while people can be disrespectful towards AAPI cultures, they also seem to exotify and romanticize popular culture. Things like K-pop and anime come to mind first. These are super popular around the world, but people often reduce the country from which it came from to just that one thing. Similarly, people tend to romanticize and glorify living in these countries while ignoring the darker problems. They're often seen as trendy and perfect. This is harmful because it leads to a warped view of these extensive countries with rich histories. Korea is not just K-pop, and Japan is not just anime and cute things. When people reduce countries to their stereotypes, they ignore the majority of the country as a whole, which can lead to warped views of this country. Now, while people seem to love East Asian cultures, there's also been increasingly more xenophobia, which is defined as the fear of Chinese people and/or Chinese culture. This could be due to anti-Chinese Communist Party rhetoric, which causes people to associate Chinese people and culture with the government's actions, which is not the case. Because of xenophobia, Chinese companies such as Miniso, MiHoYo, and TikTok try to distance themselves from being known as a Chinese company. Miniso and MiHoYo both styled and branded themselves as Japanese companies in order to appeal to more people. TikTok has also tried to distance itself from its parent company, ByteDance, after coming under fire for privacy and security concerns. They have recently received an intense negative reaction from the American public, which seems to be a double standard considering Facebook didn't receive the same kind of reaction when they were under investigation. These various experiences are what I called a never-ending battle between extreme likes and dislikes of Asian cultures. So, what can be done? On a personal level, if you see any racist actions happening around you, be sure to speak up. Even simple expressions of disagreement can be helpful as it makes AAPI individuals feel seen and supported. If any of your loved ones are unaware of such issues or their own actions, maybe try informing and educating them. And if you can, support AAPI organizations that advocate for AAPI rights. It's the small steps we all do that create big change. On a larger scale, I believe the whole country needs to acknowledge the widespread and normalized racism against the AAPI community. Without support, change is extremely difficult. new legislation and policy can be implemented to help fight racism and support the AAPI community. Overall, this blogging project allowed me to learn more about different aspects of AAPI hate and where it can be seen in our lives. It made me develop a stronger passion for advocacy as I put my experiences into words. I hope to be able to continue learning and advocating long beyond this project and internship. Thank you everyone for listening to my presentation. If you'd like to read the whole blog, be sure to visit the link below or scan the QR code. Thanks for supporting our blog project. Now that we've heard from me about my experiences with AAPI hate, let's learn about Ankita's thoughts on AAPI hate.
Hi everyone, my name is Ankita, and today I'll be talking to you about my blog, How to Deal with AAPI Hate. So a little bit about me, I'm a sophomore at Dublin High School, and I decided to join the Lotus Project about a year ago when I went into my freshman year of high school. So the main reason I decided to be part of the Lotus Project was because going into high school, I was able to see how much of an impact our youth has on the understanding of others and how much of an impact the stigmas that we create can impact how we view other racial groups. And I decided that I wanted to take a step forward and educate and spread awareness about just hate and stigma surrounding racial groups. So recognizing hate. AAPI hate refers to the recent increase in hate crimes and discrimination against Asian American and Pacific Islanders in the United States. And this trend has been linked to the COVID-19 pandemic, which has basically falsely blamed the AAPI community of starting this pandemic. Between March 2020 and March 2021, there was a reported 6,600 incidents of hate crimes against the AAPI community. And these incidents range from verbal harassment to physical assault, and they have had a devastating impact on the AAPI community. Now, the AAPI community has a long history of facing discrimination and xenophobia in the United States, and this can range from World War II up until now. However, this recent increase in hate crimes and discrimination against AAPI individuals is a reminder that we as America and we as individuals have a long way to go in terms of building a society that is free from racism, discrimination, and hate. Moving on, addressing the issue. So AAPI hate has increased significantly in New York and basically large metropolitan cities such as San Francisco and Chicago, just because of how many misconceptions float around in the air, because of the lack of awareness and lack of education that citizens have and are unaware of what the actual situation is. Now, hate crimes have been really strong against elderly Asians, mostly because of their inability to be able to fight back or combat basically the hate that they receive. And hate crimes aren't really just limited to adults or elderly. It's also something that's really present in schools via derogatory language or hateful jokes and comments towards specific racial groups, not just AAPI individuals, but other minorities as well. And there was a significant job loss and opportunity loss during this sort of COVID-19 pandemic, specifically for the AAPI individual community because of the stigma and because of the hate that they received due to the misconception about the AAPI community starting the COVID-19 pandemic. Basically, in recent reports, about 65% of reported incidents were verbal harassment, 18% were basically just avoidance of the AAPI community, and about 12% was physical assault and harassment. There's about 150% increased hate in the AAPI community across the United States in 2020. And honestly, a major of these hate crimes are stemmed from the youth of our society because of their inability to understand and access to the proper resources to understand about how much hate is actually stemmed within the US because of misconceptions. Now, in order to progress and sort of address this issue, the best thing is to kind of first educate yourself as well as try to educate others rather than assuming beforehand and rather than just going along with others say. Doing your own research, understanding what the issue is really important in order to address the AAPI hate crimes as an individual. So if you're interested in reading this blog, here is a link that you can check out, and here's a QR code that you can scan. Thank you.
Now that we've heard from Ankita about AAPI hate, let's learn about what that may look like in school.
Hello, my name is Sarah, and today I'm going to be discussing what I did my blog post on, which was imposter syndrome. Now, to start off, I'm going to be sharing some information about me. I currently attend Northgate High School as a sophomore, which is located in Walnut Creek, California, and I joined the Lotus Project around a year ago, and I really liked it, so it's great. Now, I'm going to be starting off by highlighting the three most important highlights of my blog, which are first to define what imposter syndrome is, how to address it, and my personal experiences behind it, and why I decided to choose to write my blog about imposter syndrome. Now, first, what is imposter syndrome? It is associated with self-image and perfectionism. It is a phenomenon that occurs when we begin to attribute our own accomplishments and achievements to luck, and it directly influences how we feel and think negatively. It can also harm personal relationships for this reason. To address imposter syndrome, we need to first recognize your own strengths. Now, recognizing your own strengths is a very important aspect in order to get rid of the negative effects of imposter syndrome, because only by recognizing your own strengths can you truly realize that how you think and feel right now is irrational and it may not accurately attribute to what you have accomplished. And the second is to talk to a mentor or someone who can help. Getting an outsider's perspective is crucial because then it lets you basically essentially down to earth per se. Because usually if you suffer from imposter syndrome, you tend to have a lot of exaggerated thoughts that discredit what you may have achieved. And so if you get a secondary outsider opinion that's neutral, they can help you recognize whether how you feel is more irrational or not. Now, the third is, most importantly, is to end toxic mindsets. If you start subconsciously thinking, oh, I can't do this because I know I can't do this, or I can do this, but if I do this, it's purely because of luck. Or maybe even no matter how hard I try, I will never be able to accomplish this or this because I'm not confident enough. Then you need to put an end to those thoughts, because if not, then you're going to continuously subconsciously act upon them and you will be negatively influenced to perform worse because of those thoughts. It is only by getting rid of these toxic negative mindsets that you are able to grow and mature as a person. Now, we can move on to my personal experiences and why I chose to write about imposter syndrome. My most notable experience of imposter syndrome is that of being a woman in STEM. It's very difficult in my experience to find a supportive community, especially in my area where all the STEM clubs are essentially 96% male dominated. So it's very difficult to find someone who can support you in the same way. And most importantly, and sadly, it is really difficult to essentially prove your worth in the community, because usually people look down on you for being a woman in STEM because you're assumed to be worse. So that is one of my most important experiences in my life as a woman in STEM, to have that feeling of imposter syndrome, like I don't belong. Now, imposter syndrome has influenced my life by influencing feelings of self-worthlessness, and it has led to a lot of overanalyzation of my own worth, my own self. This I did not actually recognize this until a few months ago, it leads to a lot of self-destructive habits. And you may not notice these habits, but it's something very small. Like, it can be like very small habits, such as purposely distancing yourself from competitions because you feel like you'll drag down the team. It can be like not wanting to talk in the sense that you're afraid that they might kick you out per se for just expressing your own opinion, stuff like that. And I've recognized these habits and I've tried to put an end to them, but it's much more difficult than it seems. And I feel that even though my story is just one of many, in my experience, I think that these self-destructive habits are the most important to single out and need to be prioritized in terms of all the other influences that imposter syndrome has done to me. Okay, and that is all. Thank you so much for listening. And these are my credits. The presentation template was from Slides Media. The images were from Unsplash. Here are my citations on the bottom, and feel free to check out our blogs at tinyurl.com/lotusblogs. Thank you.
Now that we've heard from Sarah about AAPI hate at school, let's learn about what that may look like in the media.
Hi there. My name is Father Mohammadi. I am a blog project volunteer, and I will be presenting about my blog project. The title of this blog project is K-pop Music to Political Messaging, The Remarkable Impact. So before I get started into what my blog project contains, I want to talk a little bit about me and why I even joined the Lotus Project as a volunteer. So again, my name is Fatima Mohammadi. My pronouns are she, her. I am a blog project volunteer. I'm a senior at Torrance High School, which is around South Bay, Los Angeles. And I joined the Lotus Project in order to raise awareness about Asian American and Pacific Islander mental health and how we as people can advocate for a better world when we are involved and civically engaged in improving the lives of everyone, leaving no room for discrimination against Asian people in the US. My three main goals is to raise awareness, advocate, and be civically engaged in my community. And I have a lot of experience in other volunteer groups as well. But specifically in the Lotus Project, last year, for a summer mixer event, I was an outreach team member, where I publicized our event and reached out to a lot of communities and people who may have been interested, who reside in Oakland, California. Through this online volunteer experience, I realized the importance of reaching out to others in order to help bring people together into a civically engaged community. So to talk a little bit about my blog that I had done this year, my blog was relating to K-pop music and political messaging and the remarkable impact that it makes. So I want to share a bit of an intro statement that I have pasted here under the blog interview title about what my blog is intended to write about. So it states that as the White House begins to initiate more policies in order to protect Asian Americans, a popular K-pop boy band group by the name Bangtan Boys, or BTS, announced a statement published in Korean and English referring to discriminatory experiences that made them feel powerless, says a BBC News journalist. The English/Korean statements were posted on Twitter, and they were liked by more than 2 million users across the globe. In short, BTS stated that they stand against racial discrimination and that everyone has the right to be respected. I had included a lot of quotes by BTS because of their importance in the music community as well as the young people community. And what I mean by that is young people, such as kids in school, kids in college, and they make a lot of differences, right? They are part of a lot of volunteer groups, and a K-pop boy band group such as BTS makes a difference because their ideas truly do shape people who follow them, which tends to be the younger audience. So I wanted to show two quotes that I had included into my blog. The first being by current President Joe Biden. He states that while their families were behind the barbed wires, Japanese American soldiers fought in defense of the nation's freedom with valor and courage no matter what. This quote has to do with a certain section that I wrote about regarding a past Japanese executive order of 9066, which was passed while former past president Franklin D. Roosevelt was in office. And I talk a lot about the history and how there was a recent anniversary of that executive order, the 81st anniversary to be exact, of that statement being approved by that past president. And how, unfortunately, history might be repeating itself, especially with recent past events of Asian American hate and discrimination in America. The next quote is by BTS, in which their Twitter statement, translated from Korean, states, "What is happening right now cannot be dissociated from our identity as Asians. It requires considerable time for us to discuss this carefully, and we contemplated deeply on how we should voice our message. But what our voice must convey is clear. We stand against racial discrimination. We condemn violence. You, I, and we all have the right to be respected. We will stand together." What is really important about this quote is the way that it reached the younger audience. Obviously, Twitter is an application that doesn't involve too many people that are older. So these ideas and these ideologies and these theories from this group really does shape the ideas of young people. And when they are just and humane, and they say good in it, it's very important for people who do believe in what BTS does state and following that rather than following other opinions that may be hostile and discriminatory against especially Asian Americans. These two quotes are a very small section of my whole blog article, and the whole thing really just talks about how important and remarkable it is for a group like BTS to showcase their feelings and showcase others' feelings and making sure that their voices are heard, especially with the recent presentation at the US White House. We see how they nicely and professionally they present their case and their feelings towards these Asian American discriminations, especially for the AAPI Mental Health Month. Although it may be my opinion solely that what they say is correct, and it may be a little biased, but I do believe that what they say is the right message, which is why I wanted to showcase what they stated in my blog article. Other than including statements made by BTS, I spoke on a lot about the relationship between K-pop idols or other celebrities and a fan, where it is a two-way street. What I mean by that is that fans devote their attention to their idols, where they pick biases and ultimates. While this dedication might seem odd, the support of the artist by their fans is the key part of an equation that makes the entire system work. In other words, artists like these who care about the well-being of their fans try to uplift them and provide a positive influence. Interactions between the fan and the idol typically result in the idol asking if the fan has eaten, and so the artist requests that the fan stay healthy. That is just one example of how amazing it could be to influence these young kids with groups like these, who talk about leaving no room for discrimination for Asian Americans and overall any community that's out there. Through this type of relationship, the idol can recognize that their existence does depend on the fan, and so the fans then depend on the idol. This ideology has gone into American media, and personally, I think it's such a good thing because it helps us understand that there are groups that are discriminated against and that we need to be the ones that need to accept them for who they are because no matter where we come from, we're all the same people in terms of what we are able to do, especially in America, and that there should be no room for discrimination against others. So I thank you for listening to my presentation today, and I hope that you can check out my blog as well as other volunteers who wrote these blogs as well. I have the website under the thank you text there. And yeah, I just want to state that I'm very grateful for this opportunity in order to write a blog project, something that I'm passionate about. I appreciate that I had the free reign to really write about anything as long as it was approved. And I definitely do see myself doing this later in the future, advocating for a better world for not only just Asian Americans, but possibly even other communities as well, and writing blogs about other Indigenous communities that are also struggling with discrimination against them. But this volunteer opportunity really helped me realize how to write a blog in a well manner and how to write it in a truly non-biased manner when writing the article. And it was just a really great experience for me to volunteer and do this and contribute to Asian American and Pacific Islander mental health. So thank you.
If you're interested in learning more about the Lotus Project, be sure to visit our website. And thank you for listening.